so looking forward to us jumping into some new chords today. You have already learned all 12 major triads, and you've learned all 12 minor triads, and now we're going to add 12 more new ones today, and so your grand total is going to be all the way up to 36. So let's get started. We have been talking about a major 5-finger pattern, and I'm just going to draw this one right on C. And you already know that the first note of a major 5-finger pattern is called the tonic note, our most important one. And we can also label that a couple of different ways. We can label it with a Roman numeral 1, indicating that it was built on the first note of the 5-finger pattern. And we can also call it a tonic triad, and we can also label it a C triad, and that is often labeled up here with a capital C for the major triad. So I'm going to build that triad on that first note that you're already acquainted with, but I can build a triad on each one of the notes of the 5-finger pattern. And if I played that for you, it would sound like this. And as we have labeled this one number 1, this triad would be number 2, this one would be number 3, this one is number 4, and this one is number 5, using with the Roman numerals. The reason that these two are lowercase is because these are minor triads, and actually we're going to save those 2 triads for next semester. So we will get rid of those 2 particular triads, and we're going to be talking about these in particular this week and next week. So the tonic triad that's its scale degree name, and this one over here, this number 5, is called the dominant triad. The dominant triad, as you know, that's not just a musical word, but the dominant to be strong and forceful. And so we're going to save this triad for next week. And today we're just going to look at the tonic and the dominant triads. This is built on the first note of the 5-finger pattern. This one is built on the 5th note of the 5-finger pattern. This dominant triad, we often add an extra note on the top of it. And so we're going to just these are all intervals of thirds, and we're just going to continue to add another third on top. If we counted from the bottom and counted the interval from here, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's often called the dominant 7th chord. The dominant 7th chord. And then we also put a 7 on the side of the Roman numeral, and that is the 5-7. We can call it the scale degree name, called the dominant 7, or we could use a chord symbol and call it a G7 because it starts on a G and it has that extra note up there. So this is a very, very common chord. You're going to be playing this all the time. And as you can see, going from here, jumping way up there is a little bit awkward. And so we're going to do some rearranging to make it fall easily within your hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my notes, my lines back here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange this. And we're going to create what we call an inversion. And so inversion, a common musical word, but it's also just a regular word, and which many of you know that it just means to flip something over, or it's upside down when you invert something. So what I'm going to do with this dominant 7th chord is that I'm going to take this top note, and instead of having it way up there, I'm going to put it on this F line. This is an F, but I'm dropping it an octave lower. This G, this root, the root is the name of the chord, and I'm just going to keep it right where it normally goes. And this one, I'm going to get rid of that one. It's not so incredibly important. And this B right here, I'm going to put it an octave lower. And so believe it or not, this chord and that chord are the same chord, and we can still call it a G7 chord. But because it's in a different arrangement, and more specifically the correct word that we would use is that it's in a different inversion. And so we're going to take that G7 and we're going to name what the lowest note is. And that lowest note is a B. And so that's a G7 over a B. It's still our dominant 7th chord, but now instead of calling it a 5-7, we are going to, it is still is a 5 chord, but you can see how differently it looks from there to there. So we're going to change this number. Instead of that added 7th note up there, we're going to identify what the intervals are. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to put a 6 right there, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a 6, 5. And this is called a first inversion triad. First inversion, when you see a 6, 5 on the side of a Roman numeral, or actually I could even write it this way. I could put a G6, 5. That would be another way of writing it this way, but the 6, 5 does indicate that it is a first inversion triad. And so that's what we're going to look at, and we're going to learn how to do are these first inversion triads. Let me get rid of this just for a moment. Now, when you're playing these with the left hand, what you're going to be doing is another, if I wrote this out as a chart, the number 1 triad would use, and I'm just going to talk about the left hand. We're going to use finger 5, 3, and 1, and that's what's going to create our major triad, When we want to get to the 5, 6, 5 chord, and if we're following that chart, your thumb, and again, this is the left hand, your thumb is going to stay the same. Your third finger is going to go to your second finger, but it's going to go up a half a step, And your fifth finger, you're still going to do your fifth finger when you go to the 5, 6, 5 chord, but you're going to go down a half a step. Now this is one of the most common triads, common chords there are, is this tonic to the dominant chord, and it's what much of our Western music is built around, is that tonic to the dominant being the strong chord, shifting you back to the 1 chord. And so this little chart here of how to get to that 5, 6, 5, no matter what key you're in, this is a good chart for you to follow. So let's come over here and take a look of how that looks on the piano. And so if I start in the key of C, there's my number 1 chord, my third finger goes to my second finger, and my little finger goes down a half a step, and there's our 5, 6, 5 chord, the 1 to the 5, 6, 5, and there's the 1, your third finger goes up a half a step to your second finger, your little finger, finger 5, goes down a half a step, and that's how we create the dominant 7 chord in first inversion. We can do that no matter where we start. Let's try it in the key of G. Here we are in G. G, your little finger, finger 5, is going to go down a half a step. This time it'll take you to a black key. Your third finger always goes up a half a step using your second finger, while your finger 5 goes down a half a step. There's our 5, 6, 5, our 1 to the 5, 6, 5 to the 1. Let me show you it in D. Here's our D major triad. Your third finger goes up a half a step to your second finger. Your little finger 5 goes down a half a step. So you have to remember that those two are moving out away from each other a half a step. Doesn't matter where you start, even if you started on black keys triads. This goes up a half a step. This one moves down a half a step, and then we have our 5, 6, 5. So please turn in your books on page 187 to 189. It will explain that, and we'll have lots of fun learning these new dominant 7th chords.